Hello everyone, thank you Isabel. As Isabel said, I'm Tamsin Bookey. I manage Tower Hamlets Local History Library and Archives in London. And what I'm going to talk about is a rather long preamble on background to our project partners with Out of the Box and some barriers to access for archives for disabled people. Which I think are key to understanding why we developed this project. Then I'm going to introduce the project and show you some photos of the work in progress and some observations that we've made so far, some lessons learnt on our process. And I've also got a couple of case studies of participants, disabled people who've used our collections through this project, and then some sort of next steps. So Out of the Box is very much a work in progress. It started earlier this year and it won't finish till next year. So lots of caveats for what I'm going to say is that it's still moving, it's still going. Also, I was supposed to be presenting with my colleague Chala Kim Yonku, who is the lead artist on the project, but unfortunately he's had a family emergency and he's in Turkey and he's not able to join us, but he sends his apologies. So Out of the Box is a creative partnership between us, the Council's Local History Library and Archives, and FilmPro Limited. We received a grant from the Arts Council, Grants for the Arts Fund, of around £13,000, for which we are very grateful, to do this project, and also a small financial contribution from One Tower Hamlets, which is the Council's Equalities Fund. And we were also very grateful to receive support from TNA's Archiving the Arts strand, and thank you to colleagues in the audience, hi, who have also been involved and are on our steering group. So just a bit of background if you don't know who we are, where we are. The London Borough of Tower Hamlets is the traditional East End of London, although many boroughs do fight for that title. Before 1965, we were made up of the metropolitan boroughs of Bethnal Green, Stepney and Poplar. And some traditional, well-trodden themes in our borough's history include the docks, housing, particularly slum clearance, deprivation, social housing, the Blitz, immigration, labour and strikes, and political protest. The Local History Library and Archives is located in Stepney Green on Bancroft Road in an 1860 listed building, and this is a shot of our reading room, with its rather ornate Carnegie-funded ceiling. And we hold one of the biggest local authority collections in London. We have, obviously, the records of the council and its predecessors, a very large collection of title deeds, which we are in the process of cataloguing at the moment, many archives of places of worship, local businesses, clubs and societies, and a growing collection of oral histories as well. We are a joint service with the Local History Library, which has a very extensive image collection of 36,000 photographs and thousands upon thousands of books, pamphlets, press cuttings. We also have a film and video collection, and because there is no borough museum and there has never been a borough museum, we have acquired reactively some museum objects and paintings too, but we don't have any museum function formally. Because we are in this very large library building, we've managed to sort of take over gradually vacated spaces in it to put on our own exhibitions and events. So we do regular film screenings and talks and also creative workshops. And with the recent establishment of a post dedicated to outreach a couple of years ago, we're developing more workshops for schools, colleges, lifelong learners, including people for whom English is a second or other language, community groups, University of the Third Age, as well as the universities in our borough. We're right next to Queen Mary, University of London, for example. So that's us. So FilmPro, who are our project partners that we are leading the project with, are a disabled-led film and digital art agency. They are based nearby in Hoxton, just outside the borough boundary in Hackney, actually. And what FilmPro does is activities ranging from mentoring and concept development with disabled artists to project management and production services for disabled artists, as well as access consultancy. And this is a quote from Film Pro's staff, Fatini, who unfortunately also couldn't be here today. We tailor our services to meet artists' requirements and design a barrier-free environment for their creative practice. And Film Pro assumed the following roles in this project: delivery partner and access consultant. Chala is the co-founder of Film Pro and artistic director, and also the lead artist for Out of the Box. So he had two roles. And he is a digital and video artist, as well as a curator and an arts consultant. And this project has very much been led by Chala's own process, his artistic process and his vision. He has not worked with archives in this way before, but he does find it fascinating, and his approach is very collaborative, and he's been working very closely with us as participants, including the staff, to bring this project forward. So moving on to the project itself, these are the kind of assumptions that my presentation is based on, that the audience, will hopefully share, that archive holding institutions should engage with as many people as possible with their collections, and that we as staff want to remove as many barriers to access as possible and not discriminate against anyone, and that archives do contain something for everyone, but that this could be better known and better understood by the general public. There are also some more practical drivers for us to do this, namely the Equality Act 2010, which replaced or absorbed the Disability Discrimination Act, and if you're a public sector organisation, also the Public Sector Equality Duty. It's also driven by the social model of disability, which is a well-established and widely supported belief that the limiting factors and the barriers to access are located in the environment rather than in the individual, which is medical model of disability. And also good practice. We, as archives, want to do the best we can to provide our service, and it's just good or best practice to try and make all of the adjustments and so on that we can. So first of all, I think it was very informative for me to kind of start out this, or the project really came from figuring out the barriers, or understanding for the first time really what the barriers to access our service were for disabled people. And it really began when we managed a project to install a lift, which had been put in the 50s and had never been upgraded, and we were so happy to finally get an accessible lift. And we wanted to be able to promote this fact to the general public, but all I could immediately think of is all the other ways in which we weren't accessible, which I'll go on to say in the next slide. But just to briefly summarise the main barriers to access. So building. The building one's service is based in. So we address the accessibility issues in a building through things like ramps, lifts, induction loops, having BSL, having braille, having signage, parking spaces. But because these often require planning, consultation, research, specialist support, and they cost money, they're often a reason why we shouldn't bother, and why they slip further down the priorities list. And the approach that we and Film Pro have taken is where there is a will, there is a way. And that really you just have to put more time and more energy into resolving this barrier. The ones that were particularly kind of important for me to realise were the intellectual and attitudinal barriers. So by intellectual, I mean somebody understanding that we exist, what we do, and how to access our service. And I'll explain that a bit more in the next slide. But attitudinal is about having staff that are confident and knowledgeable and disability friendly, disability aware, and know and don't perhaps project their own fears about getting it wrong on users, and who have had training basically and experience in providing their service to disabled people. So just to go into the intellectual barriers to access a bit more, I have to say I'm very uncomfortable with the word intellectual barrier or intellectual access. I prefer kind of comprehensional, because it's not, intellectual is a very value-laden word, but I believe it's the common, intellectual access is commonly used in the disabled equality movement. But what I'm really talking about is ability to comprehend what is going on rather than the connotations of cleverness or whatever intellectual generally is refers to in people's minds today. So there are some barriers in the essence of what we do as archivists. People need to know that you exist, where you are located, and what you can be used for. We have a tendency to focus on the people who walk through the door. And obviously our public service is always devoted to the people, our existing audiences. And we often wonder about or maybe in an idle moment, wonder about our non-users. Who are they? Why aren't they using us? And this project really is a way of exploring one particular subset of non-users. So access issues include people need to be able to visit at the right time and identify the correct service point. So in a building like this, how would they know when they walk in which is the correct point to go to for the archives? They need to have a research query or a subject area in mind first before they even come and be able to communicate it. They need to understand how to use catalogues and conduct research and request things, fill in little slips. And basic preservation, being quiet, using pencils. These are all things that are limiting factors for people in different ways. So, having established and understood these as barriers for potential disabled audiences for our service, we decided to develop a project to explore these issues and try and figure out ways of addressing them. For me, one of the intriguing things about it was that it presented an opportunity to explore our collections in ways that go beyond experiencing evidential value of words on a page. We were going to bring disabled people and collections together, and we didn't know what was going to happen next, but it probably wasn't going to be an academic article. We set it up to be a creative project in the end, but we didn't really decide that until we had met our partner, FilmPro. So we went out and tried to find a local disability support organisation that wanted to work with us on seeking funding, developing the concept and delivering the project. And FilmPro worked with us for a year and 2 applications to Arts Council to actually, before they even got paid, essentially, because they wanted to make the project work as well. So FilmPro and lead artist Chala, we got support from TNA and from the borough, and we eventually got a grant from the Arts Council in spring. But as I say, there was one failed application before then, and it took a lot of time and, I guess, partnership working between us and FilmPro to develop a project that we wanted to do that had a mutual benefit for both organisations, and that the funding bodies wanted to fund, and that the sector, I guess, thought would be of interest too. So this was our initial methodology, and this was what we pitched in our project bid to Arts Council. First of all, we had a partnership agreement with FilmPro and set up a steering group of the stakeholders. And Chala's vision for the workshops process, or for the process of the project, was to have groups of 10 or so people, disabled participants, attending a series of workshops that would be facilitated and that would be free and organised by him and his team, with us as archive staff supporting. And the 3 sessions would take this format. The first one would be exploring the collections, the second one would be responding to the archive, and the third one would be creating artwork. And in the initial methodology, the participants were going to be formed into 3 groups, defined by their preferred mode of engagement: audio, visual, and spatial. So, for example, you might choose to engage with audio collections if you are visually impaired, or you might just want to engage with audio collections, and you would go in that group. That was the plan. The project culminates in a multimedia exhibition of all of the participants' artwork. It's going to be launched at our archive in December, and then it will tour, because we're part of the council's library network, it will tour around every single branch library in Tower Hamlets, which in Tower Hamlets are called idea stores. And an important part of the project is to share the learning, because we felt that this is a new thing that hasn't really been done before. And we are committed and we are keen to share our findings, and I guess this is the first one of these, although it's still very much in process, share our findings with the wider sector, and I'll come on to that later. But I'm very interested in the discussions that have already happened so far today around what is the most suitable format in which to receive other people's lessons learned, because there doesn't seem to be a perfect answer to that question. So on to the workshops themselves. So these were the groups that we ended up with, and I cannot stress how much time was spent getting these groups together. It's one of the main learnings is the amount of personal, face-to-face engagement, phone calls, meetings with people to get them to participate. The three groups were formed as follows, and Film Pro basically led and delivered this part of the project. Individuals from the borough, maybe just outside the borough, East London generally, who are responding to our general press and also our networks. There are about 10 or so people in that group. They didn't know each other. The second group was a local Tower Hamlets-based deaf group, and the third group is an arts group, a group of people who already do regular art workshops facilitated by a local Tower Hamlets disability support organisation. And in the end, the way the three-phase approach of having audio or spatial or visual did not happen. I'm not sure exactly why, but this is something that will come out as we develop the project. But that flexibility was offered to participants, but it was on an individual level rather than at a group level. And here are some shots of some of the workshops taking place. They took place in our reading room and in our education room, and also the groups like to do work off-site as well. This is one of the Create workshops where they're starting to produce the work. So here are some observations on the process that we have gone through so far. Firstly, for my staff and the steering group, it was essential that we all had disability equality training at a very early stage in the project, and I think we had a full day's training and we all got a lot out of it, and that was coordinated by Film Pro and was tailored to the needs of the project specifically. The lead artist Chala and his team, the Film Pro guys, had personal meetings with us to build familiarity, build a relationship, build trust, I guess, on all sides. And at these meetings, he would ask, "What are your favourite collections? You know, what interests you about your jobs?" To try and build up a sort of 3D picture, I guess, of our service, because he was new to the field. It took longer than everyone thought to engage groups and get them to commit to the sequence of 3 workshops. We had some dates in the diary and they had to be pushed back. Relationships had to be developed with local groups, members directly, and the leaders. The relationship there was always a bit of a tension between relationships with the group's leaders and managers and the paid staff, I guess, of an organisation, and then the clients. So using collections, this is how it worked. The lead artist had face-to-face time with every single participant, individually asking them what local history subjects they were interested in. Then that would be communicated to us. Then we would go and match the interest to possible or available collections in advance of the workshops. And if alternative formats were needed, we would find what we had in a different format. Then the workshops were held on site with the lead artist, sometimes a guest artist, and us in there and getting hands-on, finding material, switching material, copying material, and discussing approaches with the participants. We found that 3 sessions was not enough. Once they were hooked, once they had been engaged and they were signed up to it, they wanted more. And I think we needed to have factored in time for more follow-up group or individual visits. We held the workshops at the archive and also on the group's own premises. with copies. And a local guest artist was also invited to co-facilitate, which was also useful. And a key aspect as well of the funding from Arts Council has been to fund creative enablers for all the artists involved. So these are people who are paid to assist the lead artist, guest artist, and participants. So here's an example of a creative enabler in action. We had, obviously our collections, mostly are visual-based items. You need to, you expect to have to look at them and understand what you're seeing through sight. The participant's background is they are a non-user and they're visually impaired and they have a limited confidence of accessing services in this way. And what the project offered was live audio description of the collections, as well as audio format collections like oral histories. A second case study, somebody who was interested in the kind of lost communities of the East End, and they were an artist, but they had never used archives before, and we offered wheelchair accessible facilities and a much more hands-on approach to explaining the value of our collections for their creative practice. And here's a quote from a participant. And it's true to say that the participants' response to the project is going to be manifested in their artwork primarily, but from the point of view of project review, it's useful for us to have more formal feedback. Here's a sneak preview of the exhibition. It is launching on Wednesday the 3rd of December at Tower Hamlets Local History Library, and which happens to be International Day of the Disabled People. And if you want to see which collections and which local history subjects this artwork relates to, then you'll have to come to the exhibition. This is a poem, so somebody's creative practice is writing poetry, and this is a poem that they have written in response. So, sorry, I'm running out of time. Touring the exhibition next year, full evaluation, much fuller than I've been able to present to you today, sharing the learning events. So we're going to do a seminar next March to present the project in full. And if you have done a similar project, or you know someone who's done a similar project, or you would like to join the bill and pool ideas on this, then please contact me, because I'd like to do something specifically on disability access to archives. And we're going to write this up as well somehow, and again, what format is useful? Is it a website? Is it a toolkit? Is it a paper in journal? And more training as well for staff. And apologies to those of you who've seen this slide before, but these are generally our principles for engaging with collection, as engaging with the public, hard to reach groups, and for proactively collecting from, again, groups whose archives might not ordinarily reach us. Nothing about us without us is a slogan from the disability rights movement of the 80s, and I think it's key to all of our work. We wouldn't dream of doing a project or a programme without having paid people from that community, from a Bengali organisation or a disabled organisation, to lead and develop that project with us. And it's very important to have equitable partnerships with those organisations and use volunteers ethically. So that's me, and please do get in touch if you have anything to share.